it really, when you're first starting, you have no gauge of what's good and bad. So you just say yes, 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 and then the next thing you know, you're in a situation where never in a million years you'd want to be in. You know,
Oh, yeah,
can,
yeah.
can you relate to that at all?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There, God, because it's been so many shows over the years where I've gone, I go back and forth between going, oh man, I think I know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
to, oh, maybe this wasn't it. This isn't, I don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm
Right.
failing. Yeah, yeah. And I have had plenty, plenty of stories over the years, and I don't even know where to start, really.
Well, I guess let me ask you this. This is usually something that comics remember is that show. I feel like every comic has a show or two where when they come off stage, they're like, I might be done with comedy, where that might have been it for me,
Oh, okay. So I was thinking, because this is so many, but this is one that stands out for sure. Okay. So there was a point, like you said, that there's that thing where you go, I know what I'm doing. I'm ready for. There was one point where I went, I have to do college shows. Like, I really, like, when I first started, I was like, I gotta do them. Even when people were like, hey, you gotta have an hour, I'm still like, I'm gonna do it.
right.
I'm gonna do it. And so I had done some periodically where, like, it was, kind of just, hey, we got 4 comics on the show and everybody does, 10, 20 minutes, and then the headliner's gonna do an hour. So you're like, all right, cool. Those are fine, right? So uh I get asked to do this show, and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. I can do it.
Right.
And, and I just really psyched myself out. Like, this is one of the times that I really, when people go, you can, like, I really psyched myself out, because on one hand, I'm like, oh, and it wasn't where I was going to do an hour, but it was still where I was going to do like 15, 20 minutes. But I'm like, I want to show these people that I can do this show, because they were actually just asking me to fill in. I wasn't even on their roster. They were just like, can you do this show? Like, it's last minute. We got to get somebody on the show. I'm like, absolutely. Let me show everybody. And the college was near my hometown. So I was living in Atlanta at the time, and I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to drive to my parents' house. I'm going to hang out, and I'm going to rest when I get there, and I'm going to be ready for this school. Man, I was so keyed up about it because I wanted to do such a good job that I didn't rest when I got to my parents' house. I'm just doing 10 million things. Then they give me a hotel in the city where the show is, which is probably like a 30, 45-minute drive away from my parents' house. Because I was like, cool, I'll go do the show. Then I'll go, back to Atlanta after the show. I'm too keyed up. This is how nervous I was. I went, I obviously need something to give me strength. And I went to a Target and bought a damn necklace that said strength on it, or faith, or something. Just like, like, that's how, because I'm like, I was thinking about this, and I was like, that was the dumbest thing. Like, what was I doing? But I was just like, because if I have this on, I'm going to remember, and I'm going to do really well at this show. And man, I go to the hotel, still too keyed up, and didn't rest. And I'm just running on fumes, but just very much like, cool, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. Then I go to the show, and a recent graduate who was, I think I don't know if he was doing stand up, but he kind of was like that guy that was the funny guy on campus.
Yeah.
He was pretty much like, man, this is a tough school. So, I went here and I hosted it last year, and they don't let me do a spot. So you gotta kill. I'm like, he was like, because the person we had last year got booed off. You don't want to get booed off, do you? And I'm like, no, I don't want to get booed off. And I just remember they had snacks and stuff in the green room, and I'm like, yeah, let me eat these carrots, but eat all these snacks, everything's gonna go great. And first comic goes up, does a good job. then it's me before the headliner. And I it just didn't work. Like, some stuff I said was okay, but most of it like was so bad to the point where like not only did they start to boo me mercilessly, I mean, it was just like a way, like the boos just wouldn't stop. They then started picking up their keys and shaking their keys while they were booing. So it was boos and jingling. And who else was at the show? My parents were in the front row because they were like, it's so close, we'll come. And so now I'm having to deal with this extra shame. My parents sitting in the front row like, oh. I'm like, oh God. I'm like, my parents, and I'm so glad I didn't come out and be like, my parents are here.
Right.
You know, I just was like, let me not embarrass them even worse than what is happening right now. And then like, you can see some of the students were like trying to like, let me just give her a chance. Let me try. And then the other ones were just like, nah, like, I don't know, can I cuss on this? And they were just like, fuck that, we're not laughing at all. And so like I said, the boos are coming, and then I just ended up doing that thing that I promised I would never do at a show, where I just snapped on the crowd. And I was just like, well, you know what, like, bitches, I've already graduated, okay? I have a degree. You ain't got shit. You trying to get you trying to get booed on stage like me. You want to be where I'm at. Like, it was, I started offering somebody in the crowd my insurance. I was like, I'm an adult with insurance. I'll be your sugar ball. Like, I'm just it was the most ridiculous thing. Meanwhile, that Faith strength necklace is just like, bitch, really. And it's almost like I could feel the heat of that necklace just burning against my soul, going, what were you doing? You weren't ready for this show. And I just was like, well, you know what, guys, I gotta kind of I'm gonna be here, gotta stick through this. So you gonna get me for however long I gotta be here. And then I eventually left, as I should have left within the first 5 minutes. But I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna leave. Then the headliner came, and the headliner just destroyed, just tore the place up to the point where the show ended in the entire crowd doing the electric slide en masse. And I had just never seen anything like it in my life. And I was just sitting on the side. I remember I had my phone and I started recording, and I was like, they're really doing the electric slide right now. Like, they are like, the whole room broke out into the electric slide, and I was too sad to participate in the electric slide, which is, that's the thing that brings everybody together.
Were your parents also doing the electric slide?
Thank God, no. I think they left, because I think if they had done it, I probably would have felt betrayed. Like, how dare you participate in this fun group activity when my soul has been crushed,
My God.
Yeah. So I was just watching the electric slide happen as I just sat over there, like, basically I was just like, it would have been a perfect movie moment with just a tear, just one tear as I'm watching, that would have been.
That's insane. So I guess, comics have these moments, and you really do feel after, at least for me, I don't know, you really do feel like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it won't be more comedy. And like, you're just like, I'm done. This is it. I might as well have died up there, because there's no tomorrow,
Yeah, there were multiple tweets at the same time where people were just like, I hate this bitch. She's terrible. Blah, 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 blah. So people were going, and this is the most adorable thing though. One of the students DM'd me, and he was like, I just want to apologize on behalf of my school. He was like, he was like, this is not how we treat people, and I'm so sorry. And then the most precious thing is that for years afterwards, he would message me and be like, hey, like, how are things going? Are you good? And he's like, because I kind of see some of the stuff you're doing. It looks like you're doing really good now. And he's like, I'm so glad that things are going well. And I was like, thanks, kid.
He was like, someone's got to check in on her because we don't number on her.
we we destroyed her. We destroyed her spirit. But yeah, it was one of those shows where afterwards where I was like, man, I really thought I wanted to do colleges. I guess I'm not cut out for it. I guess I just need to, because I still had my day job at the time, and I was like, maybe I just need to just focus, 100% into the day job and just I'm a corporate lady. Like that's who I am, um and then maybe two months later, another booker asked me to do a college show, and I was just like, and I just went, you know what? I'm gonna suck it up, but this time I'm gonna do the opposite of the things that I did before. I was like, I'm not gonna psych myself out. I'm just gonna be like, hey, you know what you're doing? Go do a good job. And then this was one of them shows that, again, it was like a 10 to 15 minute set. Did a 10 to 15 minute set. It was good, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I am capable of doing this, but it took me a minute, like, to be like, oh, do I want to agree to this or not?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like the college market, like you were saying, you're working a day job still. And the college market, when you know people that are doing it, you're like, this is how I get out of all the other work. Like I go and do these college shows. It seems like they're printing money at these places, and I'll just do 100 college shows. That's, and then I walk away. And then you go and do them and you realize that you're in a cafeteria at noon and it's like, why are we doing this?
Why have I done this to myself? And then, a few years later, I got a college agent, and then I started doing them regularly. And then I was like, oh, okay. But like once I kind of figured out like a rhythm of like, oh, this is how these should be done. But which leads me to another college gig story where what was it? Did a show, and it was in a cafetorium.
Okay, perfect.
So it was the whatever it was their night that was set aside for, Tuesdays we do this type of, we do live events, and the crowd is set far back from me, and halfway through the show, as I'm on the stage, I just see this kid just walk in, and he's just kind of standing there, and he's just kind of looking, and you just see him almost doing like the Michael Myers from Halloween head tilt, where he's just kind of doing like this, and I'm just like, what is this kid doing? But I'm like, let me kind of keep an eye on him or whatever. Then he starts walking to the stage, walks up the steps while I'm performing, and literally, like, if this is me, he's like this, like walks like this close in front of me. And I was just like, my heart's beating fast at this point. My boyfriend had come with me to the show, so he was over to the side, and he was kind of, we're both kind of giving each other the look like, what the fuck, what is happening right now? And then the kid just like he walks in front of me, and then he just goes to some door that's to the side of the to the left of the stage. And then he just stands there. So I'm asking all the students, I'm like, do you guys know this person? Do any of you know him? And some of them are like, like, who? I don't know who he is. And then he just is still, and I just go like, are you all right? Are you okay? Then he looks at me, does the head tilt again, and then comes back on stage, but this time walks behind me. And I'm feeling my internal hackles raise up to where I'm like, I'm going to have to fight a child.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to fight this teenager. And we're kind of giving, me and my boyfriend kind of giving each other the look like, he's kind of rising up out of his chair, like, what do we need to do? Like, we're kind of looking at each other, and I'm like, no, I can't fight these kids because I don't need them going back to my college age and talking about me fight children. Like, I don't need that on my life. I don't need people to think I'm fighting kids. It shows. And then he gets back out in the audience, and I'm like asking the kids, like, who is this dude? Like, who is he? And they're like, we don't know. And then people like, I ain't never seen this dude before. I don't know who this is. Then like you could see the student activities director standing there because the kid tried to come up a third time to the stage. And I couldn't tell what she was saying, but you could tell it was that kind of the like, no, like you can't go up there, like you can't go back, that kind of thing. And then he leaves and then comes back with like 4 or 5 other guys, and they're all just kind of hovering and just standing in the back watching it. And I was like, what in, like, oh my God. Like, and it's one of those things where I'm like, if I had been there by myself, like, who knows what would have happened. But they had to, I'm like, why do you have to physically tell us, like, you can't go back on stage? But it was one of the things where it's not like I had been messing with him because he wasn't there. Like, he didn't show up until the show was half over. So I'm like, I was in college once, so I can remember being at shows where the comics would be like, let me pick a name of somebody, or let me find out a name of a kid, and I'm gonna mess with them through the whole show, or like who's the campus, funny guy, or who's this person who's like a popular person. Like, it wasn't even like that. Like, I had no idea, like, didn't talk to the kid other than like, why are you on stage with me? Like, yeah. So I've had some interesting college gigs where I'm like, what in the hell is happening right now?
So did they leave? Did the show just ended and they all left?
Yeah, so after he got the talking to, and then with the friends, then I think the student activities director went back and said something to the whole group, and then they all left. And then I could see like one person kind of peek their head back in the room from the back, and then eventually they were just gone. But when we walked out of the cafetorium, we're still kind of like looking around like, hey, like, who, like, are we about to get jumped? Like, what was going on? So
Oh my God.
insanity.
Colleges are like the one place where you feel like, well, they may not like me, but at least they're not gonna, bother me after. But
Yeah.
so in a club, maybe someone's drunk and they say they're waiting for you outside or something like that. That sometimes happens. But I mean, it's weird that like a group of teenagers would just sort of,
Yeah.
children of porn, just
hovering. And I was like, again, I could see if it had been one of those kids where I'm like, I'm joking with you back and forth, or I call you out or something like that. But it was just unprovoked, just out of nowhere, and just the weirdest thing. And I just remember being like, I gotta get the hell up out of this town. Like, it was just like like an obscure, just like somewhere where, how some places just the whole town looks gray, whether it's the sun is out or not. Like, everything just looked gray. Like, I was like, I don't know what muted colored place this is, but the colors is like, the pizza looked gray. Every building just looked like it was just mold, like the whole city. And I was like, I remember just being like, we're sleeping, and then we are getting the hell up early as hell, and we are getting out of this town.
yeah. You don't want to become a tourist in these places,
Absolutely not. No. Yeah. And I've just, it's been so much stuff where, like, I've been embarrassed at shows. I've what is it? One time I did a very big contest, and one of the judges was a very well-known comedian. And and it was one of those things where half the room was like, hey, I rock with her, and the other half was like, I don't at all. And it was the same thing where I got a bunch of tweets and all this stuff. And then my friend, who was one of my closest friends in comedy, it was the four of us were competing. He won that region of this contest. So I'm thinking, all right, this is already enough stress as it is. But it was like, one of the judges was like a local radio host, and she was trying to clown me and saying all these, mean things. And then like the other judges, which that's another thing too. Sometimes like in comedy, like you would think like, oh, okay, like, oh, it's a woman, she would have been, but she just pretty much was just like, no, bitch, fuck you, pretty much. Like, it was her whole thing. And then the other comedy, they were like, no, it's cool. And then the guy that hosted the show was like, I thought you was funny. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then and the famous dude was very gracious and nice about it. Well, he was like, it's okay, like I could tell you were nervous, blah 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 blah, you know. And I'm like, all right, fine. But the woman was the one that was the worst about it. And then after the show was over, I was like, that was one of in fact, because this all happened within the same stretch of months where it was that show happened first, and then the college show where I was booed mercilessly with jingles, that happened a few months later. So there was all like this stretch of time where I was just like, what am I doing? And so after this show was over, the show took place in Midtown Atlanta. So I'm like, oh, you know, so my friend's like, you want to go get something to eat? And so we probably lived about 20-30 minutes north of where the show was. I'm like, yeah, cool. We'll go to the IHOP we always go to. Awesome. And then I'll be damned if we went in the IHOP and it was people from the show that came in and they were like, ah, because they saw him and they were just like, oh man, you did great. And they saw me and they were like enjoy your pancakes, bitch. Like that was just kind of the look, like you just keep eating because obviously you're already feeling bad. Just keep eating more food. You know, like that's kind of, it was just like I was treated like I straight up had the plague. Like it was like they would not even give me eye contact, but they were, and I'm literally sitting there right with him and they were just like, oh, you were killing it. And so, you know, it's just one of the things that makes you feel even worse where you're like, yeah, I mean, he did kill it. So he deserves all this praise. But it was just like I did not even exist, and so like I had yellow that all that stuff happened at just back to back months where I was just like, what is going on with my life?
Right.
What have I done? I shouldn't be doing this. I should not be doing this. I have failed. I failed.
Yeah, those sort of little bits of questioning where like, and it does. So it is all like one at a time, you know, like back to back. Like when it rains, it pours. It feels like in this business, you know, because when it's good, it feels amazing. Like you can't be stopped. You know, you're like, this is why I got into it, and then out of nowhere, you know, you're on the mat, you're looking up, and you're like, what happened? You know.
And you're like, oh yeah, and it was just, I mean, it was, yeah, like I said, it was just the worst several months in a row where I was like, I am doing something wrong. I don't, and I'm just, because it was one of the things where it was like things were working, then they weren't. Like they were working, and just then they weren't. But I think I don't know if it was because like at the time I was, you know, I was very used to doing club shows. So it was like, oh, cool, got my rhythm. And these were shows that I was like, oh, this is a theater show for a contest. And this is a college show and it's big crowd. So I don't know if that, you know,
Right.
that's what it was. But it was just like, okay, I'm kind of shaking out of my comfort zone. But it was also me just overthinking too. And also not being prepared just to be like, I know what I'm doing, and then failing
Yeah.
so
And
hard.
let me ask you, so when you have those moments, you know, because they probably never really go away, where those you have those sort of, you know, it's peaks and valleys, and you're in those sort of low moments. What is your process for sort of working through it? Do you know it's a matter of time, or do you have a process to help you get you through it?
Yeah, it's a time for sure. And then I really try to go back and assess, and I try to go, what, you know, where was my head at the time? What was I doing wrong? Like where, like kind of what made me in that place where that show turned out the way that it did? And then the thing that I saw with those shows back to back, it was like I said, just really psyching myself out, and kind of not trusting myself either. Because other shows I'd be like, oh, I know what I'm doing. Like, yeah, I think I'm a good comic, or I'm a pretty decent comic. You know, like I'm getting laughs consistently. But then those shows, there would be this extra added pressure where I'm like, I need these people to think that I'm hilarious. Where it was like, you already know you're hilarious. Like just go do the show. But I think I just put all this extra pressure, and then, and like I said, really just kind of thinking about my mindset. But within that year though, from those shows, I kind of, from a personal standpoint, I just ended up like kind of changing everything. Like I started working out all the time, and I was eating better, and I was doing all this. So when I went on stage, I was just way more confident because I was like, oh, I like the way I look. I like the way I feel. And I have all this energy now. And I'm not in this, and I'm not like psyching myself out, because it's like I kind of had this moment where I'm like, I'm on stage, like, boom, I got this. And it just, and then I was getting, you know, big shows, and I was doing well on those shows because I was like just in a better place, you know. So that helps a lot too. And I mean, and even during the time period where I was failing all the time, I still had, you know, had good shows within that time too, but it was still very much oh, what was I thinking about? So that's usually how I try to go, okay, this is one show, and if something goes bad, and like, you know, now sometimes I'll beat myself up over things, but I'll still go, you know what, that was one show, move on to the next one. And you just gotta go do the next thing.
Right.
Just gotta go.
Right. Yeah. You know, you have to. I was talking recently to Adam Ferreira, if you know him, and he just said you have to, in this business, like, you have to keep yourself in it, because there's so many things that will try to pull you out, you know. And like you're saying, like, trying to be healthier and eat better and work, like, just taking care of ourselves keeps you in it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Oh yeah, for
Because
sure.
the business is just set up to, like, really pummel you, you know, physically,
Mm-hmm.
mentally, emotionally, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And you just think, you know, it's so much, you know, and especially with social media, you know, you end up seeing what everybody's doing, or it feels like you're seeing what everybody's doing, you know. And then because because I know some people will be like, I don't worry about other people, and in general I try not to, but it's like, but it's still one of those things where you see stuff filter through, and then you're like, oh man, these people are doing this thing, and this person's doing this thing. So it's just, you know, you start thinking about it, like, well, should I be doing these things, or am I not, you know? So you can really psych yourself out and freak yourself out about a whole lot of stuff,
Yeah.
as well. And I think when you're just seeing just, you know, and then just these constant streams of what people are thinking, and, you know, how this thing blew up or how this thing failed. And you're like, well, what if I put myself out, you know, out like that? Then that could happen to me. And then you end up being extra cautious. And so you just, you know, like you said, you can take yourself out of it just because you're just looking at all this stuff that's happening all over the place. And it's just really important just to be like, let me recenter, let me reset.
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing this for? You know, why am I doing this? What am I, you know, what am I doing? And so I always try to come back to go like, oh, I forgot I was doing this because this was something I wanted to do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this was something like I thought I had a thing that was decent enough to go share with other people, and somebody's gonna like it, and there are also gonna be people who don't, and that's fine. And
Right.
then, I mean, it's hard to work through that sometimes, but you're just like, yeah, there are people who like me, cool. And you just gotta, you know, try to stay present as much as you can, and try not to worry about other people. It's hard, but you
Right.
have to try.
Right. You mentioned IHOP a little bit, and I think that's very spot on for a lot of comics. So after a bad show, after a bomb, what is the coping thing? Is it like a 24-hour place? How do you cope the best with it?
You know, I'm trying to think. A lot of times when I've had usually it'll just be me freaking out and thinking about it for a long time, and, you know, or like I'll text, you know, some of my friends, and I'll give them the full recap of the night, and then I'll just keep reliving the moment, you know, and then just get fired up all over again. And I remember, what was it? One time I was on, do you know Marina Franklin?
Mm-hmm.
I was on her podcast. This was maybe like a year ago at the time, and I remember one of the topics she brought up. It was like, how when something happens, you have to let the thing happen, feel it then, and then just be done with it. And then she was like, because if you keep talking about it, you're just gonna keep reliving that moment. And then and I just remember being like, man, that's such a good piece of advice. I said, because I will think about some show that happened, you know, 10 years ago and then just be like, I'm going to go back and fight everybody that was in the audience. And then I'm just like, why am I thinking about that? Like, that was 2010. What am I doing? You know,
Right.
but I just remember thinking that was such a good piece of advice. Like, you know what? Feel that thing at the time. Feel it, feel it, feel it. Try to get it out of your system.
I mean, that's probably the healthiest way that I've heard to deal with it. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, it's like there's nothing worse than getting on a New York subway after a bad set and having to wait for, like, just sitting with other people for 45 minutes or whatever, and you're like, God, how long is this train? Like,
Right. And then being in New York, you're like, you know, you're sitting around and you're just like, everything is gross and people are horrible. And, you know, you might be sitting on I remember sitting on the train one time and somebody just got on smoking a cigarette and he almost looked at everybody like, I dare you to stop me. So, you know, like, who wants to have a show and then have to see that?
right.
You know, yeah. So it's just, and then it's like, you know, and in New York, it's all the sounds and all that stuff. And you're just like, what? Why, you know? But yeah, I've had those shows where I've gotten in the, you know, when I have my car and I'll get in the car and just you know, sometimes I'll like, or I might retell a story somewhere, so I'm like, you know what, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let me, like you said, like, you know, like I said, the thing with you just live it and stop reliving it.
Yeah.
And because I love to relive a story. Okay, I love to relive a story and be angry. So I have to consciously and constantly work on not doing that.
I think that's really wise, though. I mean, you know, it's something that a lot of people in our business should do. You know,
Yeah.
hold on to these things for a long time.
Yeah.
And it really shows. I will ask you the sort of the cliche question here to wrap up.
Okay.
And you know, and you kind of addressed it already, but in the time from when you started to where you are now, what do you think is the thing that you've learned that sort of helps you, that keeps you in it, that keeps your, you know, it keeps you motivated? What's the thing that you say, yeah, I can do this because of this? You know, do you have something that you feel like you've learned that's kept you doing it?
You know, I think the thing that keeps me going for the most part is to like I said, just try to remember, like, well, what did I start doing this for? Like, what was the thing that made me initially excited at the beginning, and what were my reasons for it? Because, you know, I know people sometimes that'll say, I've met, you know, plenty of comics over the years, and I've met new comics that'll be like, I want to do this to be famous, and I'm like, oh, well, you are in for a very, very rough time. Like, this isn't going to end well, you know, like, and so, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm like, I never was that person. Like, I never was just like, I want to be known. I mean, of course you would like to be recognized, you know, for what you're doing, but I was like, oh yeah, that was never my reason. I was just like, I just simply thought, oh, I think I'm funny, and I think I have something to say, so I kind of want to say those things, and all my other skills have diminished over the years anyway, so what else would I do? You know, I'm like, this is what I've been working on, so I just got to keep going. And I also remember when I started, one of the things that I remember the moment that I started, I remember going, oh, because I've committed to this thing, oh, I'm gonna always be doing this thing. Like, I just remember thinking, and I was just like, oh, I'm not gonna stop doing this thing. And so even when I would, you know, meet people in my early days of comedy, where I would meet guys, it would be like, oh, so that comedy thing you're doing, right? And I'm just like, you're not somebody that needs to be around my life, because this is gonna always be here, and you won't.
Yeah.
You know, so, or you know, or a family that would be like, well, why'd you decide to do this thing? And I'm just like, because this is my thing. Like, this is the thing I decided on. You do whatever your thing is. This is the thing that I want to do. And it's just been like one of those things that's been good for me to go, no one else influenced this. No one else was like, Mia, you should. It was like, no, I thought I should.
Right.
So
I think that's a really good mindset to have and something to remember. Mia, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
No,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it. Please tell people where to see you, where to find you, where to hear you.
Ooh, all right. Well, I got a website, miajackson.com. Have I had shows on it recently? Of course not, because we're not going anywhere. But I will do Zoom shows and stuff like that. But I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Mia Comedy. My website is miajackson.com. And then if you just want to see some content, like if you have an Epics, I had a thing on there on a show called Unprotected Sets, and then I had a Comedy Central half hour that was out in it came out last November, but you can see it on Comedy Central website, Comedy Central app. So it's all there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.